This
So
conference will now be recorded.
they'll be sending you the case study. So then you can start working on it. So probably you'll take some time in the next week to discuss about your homework. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right. So today we're going to talk about the functional specification document. So let me just open that. Yep. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So as we discussed yesterday, a functional spec or a functional specification document is a more detailed documentation. So wherein the requirements are very much defined in detailed format. So the requirements and the required details around that are detailed format, so that the developer can start off developing the application accordingly. Now, if you look at a functional spec, so what exactly goes under a functional specification document? What exactly goes under a functional specification document that you can see out here? So the document summary, so which defines the purpose of the documentation. So the purpose is basically like this is a requirement document which details all the requirements for the project, and at what stage of SDLC do we prepare a functional spec. So obviously it is also prepared at the initial stages of the software development life cycle, and it is provided to confirm the project sponsor, to confirm on the business requirement, confirm the functionality that is in scope and out of scope, agree on assumptions and limitations, review the high level design solution, and approve. So basically with regards to the design solution also it will be helpful. Then similar to what we discussed yesterday with regards to the configuration management, where you have under the history section you have the action, name, date, any specific notes and the version. So when you talk about the action types, the valid action types: create, modify, approve, and review. These are all the valid action types. The name, so when we talk about the name of the person. Date, so when it is created or when it is modified, when it is reviewed, when it is approved, and so on. The version, so when you talk about the version, you have the different versions that are defined. So the version of the documentation based on the approvals, based on the changes, so the version of the documentation will change. Now, when we talk about the project summary, so it is similar to what we discussed yesterday, like the program name. So generally, the project are defined under different programs. So, what is the program name? What is the project name? And the description of the project. And what is the description of the project? And who is paying for the project? Who is sponsoring for the project? And what is the version? And who are all the clients and who are all the audience? Who are all the client and who are all the audience? So the program name, the project name, the description of the project, and who is sponsoring for the project, and what is the version, and who are all the clients and who are all the audience for the application. So that is defined under the project summary. Then we talk about the opportunity definition. So what does opportunity definition talks about? So why we are going ahead with this project? What is the necessity? What is the opportunity? What kind of improvement that we wanted to do on the system? So that is defined under the opportunity definition. That is defined as part of the opportunity definition. So then we have the business requirement. So when you talk about the business requirement, so you have this particular section under which you have the description of the business requirement. The description of the business requirement that is defined here. So in the sense that there are a set of business requirement in the earlier documentation, this is literally a continuation document to that one. So there are around 12 requirements defined in that 12 business requirement defined in that documentation. But here, so not necessary that all 12 requirements should be part of this functional specification document. So in one functional specification document that may go in multiple releases or multiple release cycles. That may go in multiple releases or multiple release cycles. So what is the description of those business requirements? The description of those business requirement. So the description is mentioned out there. Then we talk about the business are the market drivers. The business are the market drivers. So which are kind of similar to the opportunity definition, but more than that, these are the external factors which are basically making us to implement the project. Which are making us to implement the project. What are those key drivers? Key drivers. So key business drivers are the market drivers. So that are defined under the business or market drivers. So the key driver is so and so act. So because of which we need to implement these requirements and so on. So the key drivers are mentioned under this particular section of the documentation. Then we have scope, so which talks about in scope items, the requirements which are within the scope of the project development activity. So the items which are within the scope, and in scope items as well as the out of scope items. So what are all the in scope items? The in scope set of requirements, so that you can mention those in scope set of requirements are listed out here. So that means that when you break down the business requirements that are defined in the earlier section, you'll get the requirements which are within the scope of the project development activity in detailed manner. So now these many in scope items, there were just 12 requirements under BRD, and that too we are enhancing just only two requirements here. So when you drill down here, you have these many sets of requirements. There's many sets of requirements. So for every requirement, you have a unique requirement ID, unique referencing number, unique requirement ID. You'll be having it, and then you have the out of scope items as well. But one thing that is missing out here is that every requirement supposed to have a unique referencing number. Every requirement supposed to have a unique referencing number. The unique referencing number is needed for every requirement. Then we talk about the out of scope items, the requirement which are outside the scope of the development activity. The out of scope items which are kind of listed out here. You can basically find out those requirements under out of scope, which may be falling like on the boundaries of the system, or maybe because of the timelines, because of the budgets and everything. So these items may be with outside the scope of the project, or for some valid reason, whatever the items that are out of scope that needs to be mentioned here, so that the developer concentration would be on developing this set of requirements, whatever is defined here. So the requirements. Then we talk about the assumptions, the assumed factors for the development activity, assumptions and the limitations. So any limitations are timelines related, budget related, skill set related limitations. All those would be defined under the assumptions. Then we have the impact analysis. So which talks about what is the impact of this particular change on the existing system. So the particular change on the existing modules, what are all the existing modules that would get impacted? TFPM, JME, FXTE, SWAP, these are all the existing screens of the system. So because of this enhancement, so what kind of changes that are going to happen? So that is defined under the impact analysis. So actually there are many such things under this particular section, but I just kept only few things and removed the other details. So to support the reporting requirements under so and so, the following programs or processes will need to be enhanced. Will need to be enhanced. So that means the following programs are the modules or the screen that needs to be enhanced. That is the meaning of it out here. Then we talk about the functional design. So which talks about this is the major section of this particular documentation. Like you have the requirements in BRD. So in similar sense, you have a functional design as part of this particular documentation. The functional design as part of this documentation. So where you have like things like you have the very detailed information of what the developer has to pick up and develop accordingly. So now if you see here, so this is one particular screen, GENT, so where it has the branch, table ID, table value, and table text. And each field has some parameters. So what values each field will take, that is also defined here. Branch, table ID, table value, and table text. So now under this one, so under Gent, so you have something called as branch, table ID, table value, and table text and the text value. So if it is yes, no, whatever. So the Gent, you have the detail like branch, table ID, table value. So that means we are also providing the screenshot of what screen that needs to be developed. So it's, since it is an enhancement thing, so we already leveraged an existing screen and sit with the developer to add these values and to put down as part of our document. But if you are doing something for the first time, you may not have any screens or any system to be able to create those screens. In such case, you may use tools like wireframes or any kind of the design tools or Microsoft Visio to create a screen, so which can mimic the actual screen, so that the developer will get an idea how it should be looking like. Now, if you see here, you have the details like the branch, table ID, table value, and table text and the text value. And that's just not it. So if you see here, so what will happen if you change these values? What will happen if you change these values, if you change these generic text values? So what will, how the system behavior will change? So if it is blank, so how the system behavior is going to change? If it is no, how it is going to change? If it is s comma df, how it is going to change? If it is s comma emir, how it is going to change? If it is s comma df and emir, how the values or system behavior is going to change? So that means we are giving a complete set of information for the developer to pick up and develop the application accordingly. For them to pick up and develop the application accordingly. So you have the blank and no, s comma df, s comma emir, s comma df and emir. So which basically defines the details around the things. Is that clear? Any questions so far?
I have just one question. So
Mm-hmm.
now this will also affect the database system. So when the project is implemented fresh, means it's for a new project. So who is going to design the database? The developer or the BA, or both of them sit together to design the database?
So databases again, specific database admins, right? So they will be taking part in the database design. So database is something slightly a different aspect, right? So wherein you have to have the relational relations defined, the how the various things like logically how the data needs to be connected. So and which database to be used. So the database admin team, so our database analyst, so who would be designing the database for the application initially, if you are saying if it is initial stages. But if it is like a general enhancement where you are going to add some few set of tables, it doesn't need a database admin. But yes, so if your application is up and running and you have a huge database that needs to be maintained, obviously you need the database admins who are analysts who would be maintaining the database every time we add a table or we modify something. So in that case, we need to make sure we get their approval as well. For example, in this particular project case, so we have these tables, PFRI, EMIR, CNFR. These are all the tables that we have. So
Mhm.
the problem that we faced was like uh, two of these tables have more than 500 columns. Two of these tables have more than 500 columns. That's how the requirement was. So this is a reporting requirement. So in reporting requirement, you need lots and lots of data to be captured. So we have defined the requirement in such a way that you have more than 500 columns in that table. So to that extent, it is fine. But problem is like when we tried implementing it, right? So when we tried implementing, the team has said that the database admin team has said that we cannot implement any table more than 500 columns. Sorry, more than 250 columns. So now that's basically obviously like when you are implementing, you go for an approval process for the database team. They reviewed it and said that our framework does not support any table more than 256 columns. As part of spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, we have 256 columns. We only support those 256 columns. If you have more than that, you need to create another table. That means you need to break down your table into two. So that's where like we have defined second table as well and implemented it. So that's how you have the database admin team, especially when you're maintaining a huge database of the thing. So obviously that needs a design that will have a framework for it. So obviously you need the database admins who would be managing that part of it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this table, obviously, when you define the table, that is not just enough. So we need to make sure that what exactly goes under the table, what values that should be going under each of the tables, what columns. So obviously that part of the documentation is mentioned under appendix section of the documentation. Refer appendix for column details. Refer appendix for column details. Then we talk about the processing fields. So you have a number of processing fields out there, which would be again very specific to this project. So now I'm not going in detail about it. So you also have the inquiry screens. So what are the inquiry screen is used for? So whenever we want to get some data from the database, we cannot right away get the data by just by running a query or something of that sort. Generally, as a user, will not be given access to the database. Will not be given access to the database. So in such cases, so you will be having inquiry screens which are created based on the need of the customer. It is not that you will get every information. You'll get only the required information. So based on the need of the information, so you will be running a query on the database and get the data from the database. So RLIQ is one particular screen, so which is used for like to get some data from the database. The main important part that we need to understand here is that how the screen is going to look like. So now if you see this is how the screen is going to look like, where you have the deal number, USA number, rule set name. Similarly, in the down, you have execution time, rule set name, and deal number, rules markup, rule description, etc. Now, if you see here on top, if you go to this particular table, right? So this table have the details like execution time. So execution time and rule set name, deal number, rules markup, and rules description, as well as every column has the column name and what is that column description and format and the valid values. Format and the valid values. What values it will take. What values the system will accept. That format and the valid values are defined here. Format and the valid values are defined here. Execution time, rule set name, deal number, rules markup, rules description, and details. And if you see on like the next part also similar to the USA number, deal number, message type, etc. So that means that we are giving the details to the developer that what that column is and what is the format are the valid values for that field. What is the format are the what are the valid values for that particular field, the format for those fields. So that is also defined. That is also defined. So column name, column description, format and the valid values. Format and the valid values that are defined. So under appendix section of this particular documentation, as I mentioned already, so the tables are defined here. The table columns are defined here. So you have the column code, column name, and the column description. Column code and column name and the column description. USA number, USA number, external reference ID, OPIC steel number, original reference ID, etc. Column code and the column name and the column description and the column description. So those are all defined here. So if you see, these are huge tables, right? So which has more columns. So obviously, in such cases, obviously you need the approval from the database team. So what are the values that they accept? What are the format that they accept? And what are the data types that they accept for the database? That is also an important thing to understand. So then comes the glossary, which defines the terminology that is used as part of the documentation. So obviously, every document that we define, so this section is going to be common. So we need to define what is the terminology, what are all the terms that we used as part of the documentation that should be mentioned as part of the documentation itself. So that whoever looking into the document, they should get the understanding of the terminology, and if they don't, they should refer to this particular section of the documentation and be able to understand it. Then we talk about the references. The references, as I mentioned yesterday, so any study material, websites, or reference document that they have gone through while creating this particular documentation, so that will all be under the reference documentation. That will all be under the reference documentation. So then we talk about analysis model. We talk about analysis model. Any kind of analysis models or data models that we use, so those would be going under the analysis models, like data flow diagrams, flow charts, or any kind of those analysis models that we used as part of the document. For example, if there is a project that is related to more of a workflow, in that case, you would be having a flow chart or a data flow diagram. So in such cases, we need to define how to read those models, how to read those diagrams. So like what are the like various symbols and how to interpret those symbols. So that information should be defining under the analysis model. So that way, if you talk about FST, so the information is quite in a detailed manner so that a developer can pick up and develop the application. So this particular document, if you see, this seems to be a like a 50 around 14-page document. Ideally, this is more than 60-70-page document, which has all the details in the documentation. Just for referencing sake, I kept only like under each content, each header, I put only a few information and removed the rest of the part. So that's about FSD document, functional specification document. Is that clear? Are there any questions? Any questions so far? Okay. Others?
No.
All right. So, okay. So moving on to another documentation that the BA prepares, that's basically the change request documentation. So when we talk about any project, so any projects that will have changes that are defined as part of like the ongoing project. For some reason, the requirement to get changed. Some reason the requirements could to get changed. So the reason could be like sometimes the customer would come up with the changes. Sometimes we interpret it the term wrongly, and then we realize that that needs to be modified. Sometimes there will be, as I mentioned, there will be technical issues like technical challenges to implement certain things. So all that could lead to the requirement changes. Whenever a requirement get changed, you need to make sure so you follow a particular process in order to make the changes to the documentation. So how to manage the change requests and maintaining various approval process and the document template. So in case if a change is there, so obviously the change could be one requirement or a set of requirements that we are going to do for a system, right? So obviously, like you have a format, a functional specification that we have looked at right now, or more simple format, you'll have the use cases that anyway we will discuss later on. You'll define the change in a simplest way. You define the change as a requirement in a detailed manner. That's one thing. And what kind of approvals are needed, and how a change request will pass through, and who are all the people who would be reviewing that change documentation. And if you are using a tool, what are all the details that you need to capture with regards to that particular change, with regard to that particular change. So that will all go as part of change request documentation. So now let's look at the change request document, how it looks like, and what exactly goes in a change control documentation. Now this is a template. I don't have a original document, at least, because this is more of a process related one. What kind of process that we follow when there is a change request. So if you look at the contents here, change control process for the project name, and the purpose and the scope of this change, the purpose and the scope, roles and responsibilities, the roles and responsibilities with regards to the change request states, what are all the states in which the change request will pass through, entry criteria, so what is the entry criteria for the change to be initiated, what are all the tasks that you do as part of the change request process, and when we can say like the exit criteria is met, or what are the exit criteria for the change request, and change control status reporting, and change control status reporting. So like if you have to report your changes, how do you maintain that? So attributes stored for each issue, what are all the attributes stored for each issue, that is basically defined as part of the change request documentation. Now we talk about the revision history, so which talks about the name and the date and reason for changes and the version. So like as we talked about any configuration management, so maintaining the version is very important. Even if it is a small change, we also need to make sure the versioning of the documentation is maintained. Now the purpose and the scope, so which talks about why we are going ahead with the change, what is the purpose. So this document describes the process that is to be used for requesting and managing changes to the work product created and maintained by the members of the project. So it is basically used for requesting and managing the changes to the work product, requesting, manage changes to the work product. When we talk about scope, any stakeholder can submit following types of issues to the change control system. Any stakeholder can submit the following types of issues to the change control system. Request for requirement changes, additions, deletions, modifications, and deferrals in a software currently under development. Reports of problems in the current production or beta test systems. Reports of problems in the current production or beta test systems. Request for enhancements in current production systems. Enhancement in the production systems. Request for new development project. Request for new development project. So the change control process applies to baseline work product created and managed by the members of the project, including software that has been released to the production or the beta testing. Requirement specifications, group procedure. So a change not necessarily be modification to the existing requirement. It can be addition to the existing requirement, deletion to the existing requirement, modification, and any deferrals also would be considered as a change. So report of problems in the current production or beta test systems. So if there are issues in the current production or beta test system which led to the requirement changes, so that would also be part of the change request process. Request for enhancements in the current production system. If there are smaller enhancements which cannot be implemented as a complete project, so that would go as a change request. Request for new development projects. Request for new development projects, maybe a small which has like a few requirements, that is when that we can call it as a change request, CRs. So definition of under definition you have the issue. So what is the issue that we are facing, and who are all the stakeholders who get impacted by this particular change? Someone who is affected by or who can influence the project. So issue, we talk about the description or the definition of the issue. And when we talk about the roles and responsibilities, who are all the people who would be responsible for the change request initiation process, sorry, the approval process, and who would be initiating a change request, and what are all the stages in which it will pass through. What are all the stages in which it will pass through? So when we talk about the roles and responsibilities, when we talk about a change request, once it is initiated, you'll have something called someone called as originator. Originator is someone, the person who initially, the person who submits a new change request to the system. Mostly it could be a business analyst. A change request is generally submitted by a business analyst. If a business can also submit it, but with all the details, the BA would be submitting a change request to the system. So once it is submitted by the originator, it will go to the request receiver. What does request receiver will do? The person who initially receives newly submitted change request. The person who initially receives newly submitted change request. Who initially receives the newly submitted change request. The person is called as the request receiver. The person is called as the request receiver. Then from the request receiver, it goes to the evaluator. So evaluator is someone whom the CCB chair asked to analyze the impact of the proposed change. Someone whom the CCB chair asked to analyze the impact of the proposed change. The evaluator is someone who would be evaluating the change request. Would be evaluating the change request. From evaluator, it would go to the change control board. CCB stands for change control board. So the change control board is a group of people who would be reviewing the changes, who would be reviewing the changes, who would either approve the change or reject the change, or maybe like suggest the modifications, would be approving it or rejecting it, or like suggesting the modifications. So we're headed by the CCB chairperson, headed by the CCB chairperson. So the chairperson of the change control board generally has the final decision making authority if CCB does not reach the agreement. So who assumes the role of CCB? Obviously the people who has years of experience on a particular application or the application, and who has like the technical understanding. So they would assume the role of CCB, who knows in and out of the application and what could be the impact of a particular change on the system. And the change control board, the group that decides to approve or reject proposed changes for a specific project. The group that decides to approve or reject proposed changes for a specific project. So that is called a change control board. And you have the evaluator, someone whom the CCB chair asked to analyze the impact of the proposed change. Sorry, the evaluator that we talked about. Modifier. Once the CCB team approves it, so it will be assigned to the developer. Developer here we are calling the developer as the modifier. Someone responsible for making changes in the work product in response to an approved change request. In response to an approved change request. Someone responsible for making changes in the work product in response to an approved change request. That person we call it as developer. So then we have the verifier or a tester, someone who determines whether change was made correctly or not. The tester is someone who is going to verify that change. Who is going to verify that change. So that way, if you talk about the various people who are going to participate in this particular process, you have the uh, originator, and you have the from the originator you have the request receiver, and then you have the evaluator, and you have the CCB team, you have the modifier, you have the verifier. So all these are the different people who would be involved in the complete change request process. When we talk about the change request state, a change request will pass through a number of states from the time it is initiated till it got closed. So it has to pass through a number of stages. Initially, once it is submitted to the system, it will be in the submitted status. It will be in the submitted status. Once it is in the submitted status, it will basically go to the evaluator who would be evaluating the change. That's when the status will be changed to the evaluated state. That's when the change will be moved to the evaluated status. From evaluated status, it will go to the CCB team. So the CCB team would look at it and they either approve it or reject it. If they approve it, so the status will be moved to the approved status and they will identify a developer who is going to make the changes. And if they reject it, so that's the final stage. So after rejection, so there are no further changes are needed for the requirement. And then they'll put the the reason for the rejection, and that is a final stage. So once it is approved, it goes to the developer. The developer is going to make the code changes. That is when the status will be moved to the change made status, or other way we can call it as development complete. Change made or development complete. So once it is development completed, so then it goes to the tester who is going to verify that change. Who is going to verify that change. So once the verification is completed, the status will be moved to the verified status or like tested status. The verifier has confirmed that the modification in affected work product were made correctly. Modification is made correctly. Then verified, and once it is verified successfully, so the final changes are moved to the production system. That is when the status would be moved to the closed status. The modifier is going to make the changes in the final system. That is when the status would be moved to the closed status. In between, once approved for some reason, like because of the impact or some reason, the originator or someone else decided to cancel an approved change for some reason because of the impact or because of any other priorities defined. So that can be moved to the cancelled status. Can be moved to the cancelled status. So that way, if you talk about the change request state, it has to pass through a number of stages and before it is getting closed. So that's about the change request states, and then the same things are here: submitted, then it is evaluated to rejected, and if it is approved by the business, approved by the CCB team, so it will go to the developer. Developer is going to make the code changes. That's when the status will be moved to the change made status. The status will be moved to the change made status. From change made status, so it will go to a tester who is going to verify that change. That is when the status will be moved to verified status. From verified status, if it is working fine, the modified save the modified work product and do the final implementation. That is when the status is moved to close status. That's when the status is moved to close status. So that way, when you talk about the change request, it passed through all these stages. So when we talk about the entry criteria, so what is the entry criteria for change request to be implemented? So that means change control board is established for the project. You should have a change control board that should be established for the project. Baseline work product should exist. Baseline documentation should be there. Baseline work product should exist. The originator has submitted a valid issue or change request with all the necessary information to the CCB chairperson. The originator has submitted a valid issue or change request with all the necessary information to the CCB chairperson. The change control tool sets the issue's initial status to be in the submitted status. The change control tool sets the issue's initial status to be in the submitted status. So these are all the entry criteria. So first of all, change control board should be there. Baseline document should be there. The originator has submitted a valid issue or change request with all the necessary information to the CCB chairperson. The change control tool sets the issue's initial status to be the submitted status. Now, when we talk about the task, so once the change request is initiated, so the first and foremost thing is that is evaluated by the evaluator. So what does evaluator will do? The evaluator assess the issue to the feasibility, whether it is really pertains to the indicated project. The reported problem can be reproduced, an estimate of the labor hours needed to be implement the change, and so on. For a requirement in, use the impact analysis checklist. So what would be the evaluator is someone who is going to evaluate and identify what would be the impact of this change on the existing system. So that initial analysis or evaluation of the change request is to understand what would be the impact on the system. And the second level of evaluation, so the second evaluate the change. The CCB decide whether the requested change should be made now at this point of time, at some point of time in the future, or not at all, or not at all. So the CCB would look at the the change and also the analysis done by the evaluator, and they will decide whether to do it now or later or not at all. So once the change was accepted, CCB chair assigns a modifier. The CCB chairperson assigns a modifier or a developer who is going to make them, sets the status to approved status, enters the explanation, the reasons, response attribute. If the change was rejected, CCB chair sets the status to rejected and enters an explanation of why in the response attribute. So why we are rejecting this particular change. The CCB chair and originator determines formal verification of the change will be required or not. The CCB chair and the originator determine whether the formal testing is needed for the particular change or not. Only then it will go through verification process. If formal verification is not needed, something related to configuration change or something, in that case, if it is does not require any verification or testing activity, so that's when it will be modified and implemented directly. Coming to the third thing, that is implement the change. So the implementation is done by the developer. The modifier makes the necessary changes in the affected work products and notifies any other affected parties if corresponding changes are need to be made. So obviously, a change is not a simple one. It will impact a number of other locations. So once the developer makes the changes, they will also intimate to the respective people, other teams, that if change has to be made, what are all the other subsequent systems the change has to be implemented, and also the user documentation. So accordingly, the project manager has to make the changes to their project plans, because a change is something which is introduced in between, obviously. So that based on the change, the project priorities are the schedules that needs to be changed. If it becomes apparent during the work that the requested change is not feasible at all, the modifier notifies the CCB chairperson, who may then set the status to cancel status. So if for some reason it is not feasible, then it will be moved to the cancel status. When the change is completed, the modifier sets the status to change made status. Update the issue in the database with appropriate notes and response, and enters the hours of effort that were required to make the change in the actual hours attribute. Tool sends emails to the originator and the CCB chairperson. Tool sends emails to the originator and the CCB chairperson. So that way, when we talk about the implementation of the change, so obviously, like the modifier is going to implement the changes in similar way. And finally, it goes to the verifier, who is going to verify that change. So the modifier notifies the originator and verifier that the change has been made and makes all modified work products available to the people responsible for verification testing process. The verifier performs agreed upon verification steps. The verifier performs the agreed upon verification steps. If the verification is successful, the verifier sets the status to verified status. Tool sends the email to the originator and modifier. If the verification is not successful, verifier sets the status back to approved status and describes the problem in the response attribute. For a problem report issue and enhancement request issue, the modifier installs the modified work product as appropriate and update the product baseline. So once it is tested thoroughly, working thoroughly, that's when the status would be moved to the enhancement request. The modifier install the modified work products as appropriate and updates the product baseline. So once that is done, the modifier sets the status to closed, and tool sends email to the originator and CCB chairperson. Tool would be sending the email to the originator and the CCB chairperson, the CCB head. So once it is completed. So that's about the process of the change, how it is done, and who would be approving it, and who would be making the changes, and what would happen once the approval is done, once the modification is done, and who would be testing it, and what will do the next stage. Coming to the exit criteria, so what should be the status of the system what should be the status of the change request when we have to say that like we are done with the change. The status of the request is either rejected or closed. The status should be either it should be in the rejected state or in the closed state. So the modified work products have correctly installed into appropriate locations. The modified work products have been correctly installed into appropriate location. The originator, the CCB chairperson, and the project manager have been notified of the current status. Pertinent requirement traceability information has been updated. So that way, when you talk about exit criteria, the status of the request is either rejected or closed. The modified work products have been correctly installed into appropriate location. The originator, CCB chair, and project have been notified of the current status. The pertinent requirement traceability information has been updated. And coming to the change control status reporting, the CCB chair generates a report at the end of each month summarizing the status of the contents of the change control database. So that means that every month there will be a report generated, so which defines that how many change requests have been initiated, how many are approved, how many are rejected, what is the status, how many are in progress, etc. A report would be shared with the higher management by the CCB head, the change control board chairperson. Then we talk about the appendix attribute stored for each issue. So generally, a change request would be implemented in the tools. Like we use a tool like Jira or maybe Rally, or maybe like there are other project management tools. So a change request would be implemented, would be like registered in a tool first. So if you're entering the details in a tool, there will be a number of fields that you need to enter. So those fields are mentioned here. The description of the issue, actual hours, and date when it is submitted, date when it is updated in the system, then estimated hours, estimated time, and implementation priority, and then issue ID, then issue type, modifier, originator email, originator phone, etc. If you see few of the fields here, the description has to be mentioned by the originator. The actual hours of development has to be mentioned by the modifier, like how many hours it will take. Then date when it is submitted, the system will take the date. Date updated, the system will take. Estimated hours, the modifier is going to put the estimated time. Implementation priority, the CCB chairperson is going to put down the implementation priority. And the issue ID, issue type, the system will generate few fields and the respective user to enter the respective fields, like the estimation, actual time, and so on. That's where, so most of the approval process is done through the tool only. So that means the tool is used to do the complete approval process. Then coming to the problem severity description. So every change request will have a severity. So something which are very critical, some may be major changes to be done, some are minor and emergency related changes. So maybe like the severities are defined slightly in different way. S1, S2, or severity 1, severity 2 are critical, so something of that sort. So if it is an emergency change, so that is decided by the business and the various teams who has the decision power. If they decide that if it is an emergency change, so then it will bypass all the approval process. Anything that requires a change has to be made immediately, bypassing the change control process temporarily. So that kind of change, we call it as an emergency change. Then we have critical, product does not function at all or crashes. The wrong results are generated, further testing of the application is not possible. So in such cases, again, and the approvals are needed and you will be making the changes. In major and minor, it has to follow the similar process. So what we discussed now. So it has to go through all the approval process and the modifier has to pick up and modify the changes. accordingly that needs to be implemented. So that's about change request documentation, and generally which has to be done through the tool. The tool will facilitate all the approval process, and then like when we implement, so status of the issue will be moved accordingly. Is that clear?
Yeah, I have a question. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if due to some reason, like organization change or the market change, so much change in the requirement is coming up, and how we proceed with that change. That actually my question is how much how much is the so much for the change request? Like, do we have continue with the new project, or do we just proceed with the change request if so much requirement is coming for a change?
Okay, depend upon, see, change is something which we are trying to modify to an existing system, modify the requirements of an existing system, or something like we are enhancing an existing system. If your enhancement is related to one particular feature or maybe one or two features, you will probably go define each one as a separate change, and like we can say CR1, CR2, change request 1 and 2, and we'll go for the approval process and implement it separately. I mean, two change requests, something like that. So if there is some set of features that needs to be implemented, major set of features, we will consider that as a project rather than a change request. A change request is much more quicker, the approval process and other much more quicker, and which will have less impact on the system. Okay.
Okay.
While if you do a project or enhancement to an existing system, so obviously it will take time to document the things and put down the things in like a formal documentation manner, the approvals and all, so which takes time, which will
Yeah.
obviously have the duration also. It's not that like you give a project and I'll quickly deliver it. It's not that. You'll get some time to deliver those enhancements. So, and if you are part of agile methodology, right? If you're following agile methodology, rather we will not call it as change request. Any change that will go as part of new release or the iteration cycle as a normal requirement, as a normal requirement. But if it has to impact the existing system, so there is analysis, impact analysis that would be done, the approval process that would be followed, and only after the approval the change would be made to the system.
Okay.
So that's all basically depending upon the magnitude of the change that we are going to do to the system. Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
So, Kiran, I have one question. I just went through the documentation part today morning. So I found one particular term that is stakeholder documentation. What is this? Is it the same like business BRD, or is it something else?
The naming convention is kind of used differently. So the business requirement, the stakeholder requirement. So stakeholder requirement probably more of a raw set of requirement which needs to be analyzed and which needs to be put in a proper format to come up with the functional requirement. So somewhere it's a middle level documentation where it's more of a like after drilling down the business requirement, you would come up with the stakeholder requirements. Okay. Or the other could be like just the naming convention different. So we call it as BRD, BSD, FSD, SRS, software requirement specification document, etc. The naming convention also different organizations use different naming conventions.
Okay. So another thing is, like you said, that for the change requirement, we need to put all the documentation in Jira, and for BRD and FRD, so for those things, also we need to use the tool, or we need to do it on the MS Word.
Okay. So generally, right, so earlier project implementation use more of Word documentation, and any tables or such things would be like attached to the Word document as such. So now also, like any major change or enhancement, so still the documents are being created, but along with the documentation, we break down those requirements, add it to the Jira tool as user stories. We break down the requirements, so and add it to as a user stories for the to the Jira tool. The reason being, tracking would be easy. You will not miss any requirement, and you will make sure all the requirements gets closed by the end of the implementation with testing activity. So that means that we follow the documentation that will be there anyway. So along with the documentation, we also create the user stories in the tool. Is that clear?
Okay, thank
Okay, right. So any other questions? Okay, all right. So with this, I'm going to stop here for today. I have sent the case study document to the coordinator, and also I'll share with these documents as well. So they will share these details with you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one
All right.
question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so in future classes, like next classes, do we get to see the Jira tool, what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes. So we'll have a session on the Jira, and also I'll show you the Jira tool, how it looks like, and what are all the the backlog sprint planning. So how the screen should be. So I'll show you that.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Bye bye.